All Laravel fans and MoonShine fans, I welcome you to the Cut Code channel. Friends, I'm not going to drag on, and we're going to continue with MoonShine 2 guide. Let's go. Friends, let's move on. At first, I thought that we will not make a profile with you, because there are also forms there, which we have already done when we created the login and registration form with you. But later I thought about it and decided that there are still some interesting things in there, and we'll look at a bunch of new MoonShine features. Oh, and one more thing. There's a reason why we're developing the entire site on MoonShine, not just the admin area. And all this is done not with the purpose to show you, look how cool MoonShine is, you can make the whole site. And with the purpose that then already being in the admin area, you can easily use all these features. Wanted, worked in classes, wanted, in the view used components. Change the structure of the template, in general, do all that is required for your tasks. Okay, let's go. Let's move on to the profile. We have not declared it in any way. The Fortify view itself doesn't have one, and the endpoint just with the view doesn't have one either. So we need to create it with you. Let's do web. Now, friends, you and I are going to go down an interesting path. We will create a simple controller, and using the standard approach we will also interact with MoonShine. Okay, controller, profile. Controller, and let's have it be invocable. Great, let's add root, get, profile and profile controller. Let's go to the controller, and we're going to need to return a view here. The page classes from MoonShine are ideal, and there are a few ways to do this. If you just need to render some view in the MoonShine template, you can do the following: return, view page, make, set some kind of header, like profile. If you need a non-standard layouts from MoonShine, and we have our own for example, you can through set layouts specify layouts app. Then return, update and get profile. For example, take and render some view of your own, set content view, and just specify a view, for example, the same welcome, let's double render. We'll get an error that we didn't render there, but that's understandable. We also need to pass something to the view. Well, in general, we can play around and already finish this way, for example, articles, and make article query paginate. And although we don't have pagination there, we just had take 6 there. Now we have all sorts of additional nuances. I already realized that I could have left this out, but if anything, I will demonstrate it later in a quicker mode. Actually, you and I in the profile did a render of the main page with the articles. Let's get this point out of the way and go a bit of a different way. We will make a separate page class, not so fast, but a separate one, where we will render all the components one by one that we need. And that's where we'll have the most interesting part. Let's also create a directory for the pages. Not in the MoonShine directory, because that's the main web part. Okay, pages. Let it be profile page. Okay, extend the base page from MoonShine. Next add stubs, components only, okay. Let's make an empty array. And let's change the controller and return to the profile page we just created. Okay, come back, refresh and see that we already have view changed. This time we're loading our own page, only the layout is not switched to our web, it's the default one from MoonShine. Now we're going to do it in the class itself. Let's go and do the layout. Let's set the layouts up. Okay, let's check it out. We can see that everything's good. Let's go back. Next we can do title, profile right here. Also, something will change. We can add breadcrumbs right away. Let's do that so we don't forget about it later. We have a simple array, key and values, where the key is link, but let it be like that, not via root. Home and therefore our profile. Okay, back, refresh, we can see the breadcrumbs right away. We could do away with the home page, as we have it in the house as it is. Okay, that's better. Now, friends, the fun part. Let's draw our page using components. Once again, you can use components that are already in MoonShine, or you can write your own. You don't need to know much here. MoonShine components are just blade components. So you can create your own blade components, livewire components, and add them right here in the same style and they will render. But let's use only MoonShine components in this case. Let's make a block. What are we going to do now? We're going to have two forms for profile update and password change. That's two endpoints to fortify, and so we're going to do two forms as well. And we're not just going to play with form builder, we're going to play with two forms at once. We'll play with tabs, we'll look at error bags when there are different forms. In general, it will be interesting. Let's go. Let's create, as I said, tabs. Make the first tab. Let's make it information. And let's make the second one. It's going to be change password. Okay. Inside, let's sketch out the forms. Form builder. Make. We have the endpoint from Fortify. Okay. User profile information update. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to set the name of the form right away. But I'll explain to you later why that's the name I'm going to set right away. Update profile information. Okay. Then the fields. Let me tell you right now, because we are going to refer to the actions Fortify class. We already have such a class. Update user profile. Here we have validation. And pay attention. We have validation with a custom error bag. Why is that? Because we have two forms on the same page in Fortify in general. So that there are no problems, no conflicts. Validation errors are displayed in the right form. We set the error bag. And so within MoonShine we specify the same bag as in the validator. All in all, I think it's not too complicated. But there's little you didn't know, so I'm explaining. We see that we have only two fields in the update information, name and email. Let's make text, make, name. Let's make it required. Okay. And email. Make, email. Also required. Okay. Next up, folks. We need to populate this form with the current user's data. Let's make this point. There is a fillCast method for this. There's also fillJust, but there's fillCast, which is more suitable for us. Now I'll explain to you what the difference is. So, the first parameter we have is the model. In this case, the current user. And the second one we specify what type we're going to cast the data to. We already have submodels in the MoonShine box. Typecast, modelCast. We use it, make and specify the model we are going to work with, user. Look, why do we need such a thing? In general, MoonShine is flexible and it is not tied only to models. The fields themselves have no idea about models at all inside, and neither do the forms. The only exception is relationship fields. Here, I think you realize yourself that eloquent relationship fields can't live without a model. For everything else, form builder and fields don't know anything about it. They just accept an array, but we can cast to a certain type so that we have hydration, dehydration. And the end result is that in the fields, when we used formatted with you, for example, we had in the callback access already to the model. Yes, we will have user here. And not just raw data in the form of an array, or the data that we pass. We will always have them typed. Remember this point. In general, know that form builder works with anything. And for convenience, you can type all of this stuff. Next, friends, we also have this root from the Fortify method put. So let's add a hidden field. We have already done this with you. Method and let's specify set value put. Okay. Next, friends, we have also seen this point, that by default we will have a form with a save button. And let's do with you, let it be update. And we can copy. Transfer it to the second tab. Again, let's take a look at the update user password action. And here we'll see a different error bag. Here it is, update password. Let's pick it up. And let's see at once that we have the current password. This is the current password. And, accordingly, the password and the password confirmation are already new. So, let's go back to our profile page. Change the name. Change the endpoint. User, password, update. It's also in the put method. We keep it. Only in this case, we make password current. Also required. And let's make custom attributes. And let's set autocomplete off. And let's add just the password field. And password repeat confirmation, respectively. Okay. Here we do not cast or fill anything with you, so we can safely remove this line. Let's rename it. Update password. Let's see what we have done. We see that we have a form. We see the data. We see the second one. Look, let's try to update something. And in doing so, we don't see anything with you, which is in this form, which is in this form. Yes. And even if we fill in some data, you and I do not see any notifications. The only thing is that because of what we specified with your error bag, if we go to the tab, we see errors with you. But look, here's the interesting thing. You and I submitted the form in the second tab. But after the redirect, we ended up in the first one. That's not very nice. You may not realize what has happened and whether something has happened at all. How to make such a moment. Let's go back. And you and I can programmatically specify which tab is active through the active method. And in all MoonShine components there is a conditional when method, based on which we can add additional methods to the main entity. What do we need to do in this case? We need to refer you to sessions. And when we have an error, just all messages, a collection of messages is written to the session by the errors key. Let's access the session. Next, friends, we need to take a get bag. That is, the errors of only the error bag that we need. Here we have the form update password. And we use it. If we have no errors at all, then we have session errors will be null. So let's check for null, and do the following code. Then, friends, we also check for null. And check. We'll already have a collection there. So we're working with the collection is not empty. Great. And if the condition works, we take the current tab and specify that it is active. Great. We can transfer the same thing in general to the first one, although we have it active by default. But let it be. Let's do it. Okay. Let's go back, refresh. And we'll work on the password again. Let's make it update. Notice the error and we're right on the second tab. So our logic worked. Let's come back here. Let's try to update something. Like leaving out one letter. There are no errors. Because we don't have a minimum of anything here on validation. Let's do it like this. Minimum 3. Let's go back. Let's do AD. And we see that we have an error. We stay in the same tab. Friends, the next interesting thing. If we do save, we press update. Then you and I don't see anything either. That's not good either. Fortify, if all is well, returns back the status variable, where you can see what happened there. If everything is fine, let's do the following. Let's go to the page. And at the top, we'll display Flash notifications. Flash, there's a component called Make. By default, it is alert, but we can switch to status. Everything else is default. Let's see how it looks like. Click Update, and we see that we have information from Fortify at the top, which we can rename to suit ourselves with the help of localization. Overall, I really like Fortify a lot. It's super flexible, it's fun to work with. And now we will also look at one more thing. And we'll make sure of that. Let's make our update form asynchronous. To do this, we just need to add an async method. Okay, go back, update. Now when we click on update, we have the form saved asynchronously. Again, pay attention, friends. It's saving. Yes, we can check this moment, update, we can see that it is saved, but there are no notifications. Since we now have an asynchronous request, it is waiting for JSON. But if you and I fail, let's fail with Fortify in general. Here we have it right here. Profile information to response. If a JSON response is required, we just return an empty JSON response with a status of 200. But MoonShine forms require a different structure. It requires a message key. Let's see how to solve such a problem in Fortify. Let's open the Fortify provider. And in the case method, change instance and return the required response. Okay, friends. Now I'm going to show you how my mind works in general. How I came up with the idea that this is how to work with Fortify. I think this will be particularly interesting for beginners. Let's go to the Fortify package. And here we're going to find a replacement response. I was actually looking at the documentation originally. But I already remember that it's about login response. And there's an example right away. Although it's a logout example, but it doesn't matter. We're going to copy it now. And bring it to ourselves. Service container laravel. Change instance. The first parameter is an abstraction in the form of an interface. Let's use it. Profile information updated response. It looks like the truth. And we already have an anonymous class that will implement the same interface. But we're going to change the response a bit. We'll make a response, a JSON. And we'll specify what is required in MoonShine. Updated. Okay. Let's try it. It looks right. Go back, click update. And we see a message at the top that everything has been updated. Accordingly, we can play and work with you. In the end, friends, I wanted to skip the implementation of the profile, but we played with pages, and through our own controller. Although there is also an internal MoonShine controller, with its own sugar. I think we'll get to it too. Either in this guide or in separate lessons. An interesting work with you with the forms. I think that it is full-fledged with error bag, with fill cast, and even with asynchronous mode. In addition, in the form in the async method, there is an interesting argument async events, where we can pass certain events from JS as an array, and after the form is successfully submitted, these events will be jerked. You can already build additional logic to reload the neighboring table form, reset the form. In general, you can do anything you want. MoonShine has its own events, but you can also declare your own events via Alpine.js. Friends, this is the end of MoonShine tutorial. The next lesson will be even more interesting, so be sure to follow, click the bell, subscribe to the channel, don't forget about likes and comments. This is extremely important for the development of the channel and for the development of MoonShine itself. And I thank you in advance for the likes and comments, and thank you for watching and for choosing MoonShine and staying with us. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video on Cut Code.